Now, this is Wave 3 News.
It is just sickening. We will make an arrest. We will make an arrest.
An off-duty Jefferson County Sheriff's deputy is, quote, targeted and ambushed. The full force of LMPD and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department now searching for his killer. This is Wave 3 News at 6. I'm John Bowles. Shannon Kogan has the night off. This is 26-year-old Brandon Shirley. He was killed early this morning in his own vehicle, working a second job as security at Rockford Lane Auto Sales. Deputy Shirley was in uniform when police say somebody walked up to his vehicle and shot him. He was rushed to U of L Hospital, immediately given treatment, but his wounds were too severe and he died. We're all across Jefferson County tonight with team coverage looking into who Deputy Shirley was and how all of this unfolded. And we begin with Wave 3 News reporter Olivia Russell, who has the latest on the investigation right now.
Investigators are still reviewing surveillance video from neighboring businesses, including Rockford Lane Liquors that's right next door. We got a look at their cameras today. They're hopeful that video will help lead to an arrest.
3 in the morning on Rockford Lane, I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Around 2:30 a.m. at Rockford Lane Auto Sales.
It's like probably 10 feet away from us, and we had an employee here that was here maybe 10 minutes before it happened.
The cameras next door at Rockford Lane Liquors are a major focus for investigators.
They were here this morning looking at it. I mean, it's really hard to see because we only have so much that we can get over there. I don't know if they have surveillance or not, but ours only reaches like to the cars a little bit, so you can see shadows and stuff, but nothing that would be like definitive.
Manager Jacob Mayer wishes they could see more, like clothing or a car, but there are only shadows before the flashing police lights show up. He hopes there's something that could add to the investigation. You can't see much, and police also haven't said much.
The highest priority is for us to get a conviction, and that means putting forward as least amount of information at this time until we have effected arrest and put the investigation together.
Chief Erica Shields was tight-lipped during Thursday morning's press briefing. She said they're looking at surveillance videos like this. The chief also said they do have a possible suspect or persons of interest, but again, didn't offer any details. She promised an arrest and conviction. That's all neighbors and Jacob Mayer can hope for.
Hopefully in the next day, I know they're confident they will, so hope they do.
Now, we last heard from police around 10 o'clock this morning. We still don't know exactly when we'll learn more information, but we'll keep you updated as we do learn more. Live in Shively, Olivia Russell, Wave 3 News.
Not long after his death, a line of Jefferson County cruisers formed a procession leading a hearse carrying Deputy Shirley's body from the medical examiner's office to Owen Funeral Home on Dixie Highway. That is where Wave 3 News reporter David Mattingly is live. We've been following the procession. So, David, what are things like there?
John, it was a 17-mile trip from the coroner's office here to the funeral home, and along the way there was a contingent of deputies who were making sure that that journey went off without a hitch. Take a look now. You'll see what I'm talking about here. The deputies were escorting the hearse. They started by winding their way through Anchorage to Shelbyville Road, lights flashing all the way. They completely cleared the road. Motorists were very quick to pull to the side and get out of the way when they saw what was happening. The pace really picked up also when they hit the Waterson, 70 to 80 miles an hour at times. Along the way, first responders gathered at a couple of overpasses, their lights flashing in a show of respect for this fallen officer as well. The journey ended here on Dixie Highway, where we heard from the head of the group supporting heroes.
That he represents every other law enforcement officer in the Commonwealth, in this community. They all have the same passion to serve, the willingness to serve, the willingness to risk their lives to serve. And you know, the officers have been painted with a very broad brush and a negative light for a while, but this is what they face every day. They know this is a reality, and it doesn't deter them.
Eric Johnson of Supporting Heroes there also telling us that it is tradition now that deputies will remain at the side of the body of Deputy Brandon Shirley. They will be maintaining a watch until the funeral. Reporting live, David Mattingly, Wave 3 News.
Now we're also learning more about Brandon Shirley, the man, tonight. Wave 3 News reporter Nick Pick live outside the sheriff's office with that angle.
Shirley's friends and colleagues said that he was someone called to be a public servant. They said he was always willing to put others ahead of himself. Shirley, just 26 years old, was a sheriff's deputy for 2 years assigned to courthouse duty, and his crowning achievement came last summer when he rushed out of the courthouse and helped arrest the shooter accused of shooting Louisville photographer Tyler Girth. For that, he was awarded the Medal of Valor. And they just described him, his friends, as somebody who was willing to do that even in the face of death. Before he was a deputy, he actually worked as an EMT with Metro Emergency Services. That's where he met Major Mary Taylor. We talked to her today. She said he was selfless and hardworking.
Just a great person to be around. Never had a crossword to say. He was just always very friendly, approachable, always just, he had a good time. I mean, he always had a good time at work. He was one of those people that you wanted to be around because he made your day a little bit better.
Taylor says her group plans to keep Shirley's memory alive by continuing to talk about him, share stories about him. Meanwhile, Shirley's family is beginning to formulate the funeral arrangements. Live in downtown Louisville, Nick Pict, Wave 3 News.
Police believe the deputy was targeted when he was shot and killed this morning. We spoke to neighbors who live just a few hundred feet away from where it happened. They say he was a familiar face in their neighborhood.
I believe he was targeted too, because he sits there every night, right on the edge of that lot, you know, monitoring that lot. So I believe he was targeted too.
Buck says seeing Shirley there regularly makes the situation all the more gut-wrenching. The number of officers shot has gone up. It has the FBI worried about that trend so far this year. Wave 3 News troubleshooter Natalia Martino spent the afternoon breaking these numbers down.
And it is alarming when you take a look at the overall picture. 2020 was the deadliest year for law enforcement. A big chunk of that was because of COVID. But I found another alarming trend, the number of attacks on officers.
Deputy Brandon Shirley is now one of the 83 officers killed in the line of duty so far this year in the U.S., 15 of them killed during unprovoked attacks, according to the FBI, worrying the agency, who said those attacks have outpaced all other circumstances during felonious incidents. So far this year, one other officer was ambushed and killed. 6 were ambushed last year. COVID has proven to be deadly among law enforcement who continued to serve during the pandemic, claiming 145 lives. But it's the attacks that also stand out. In 2020, 312 officers were shot. That's a 14% increase from the year before. The circumstances behind Shirley's death are so far unknown as detectives work to catch the killers. There was one statistic that offered a bit of hope when it comes to getting justice for those officers killed. 97% of those cases this year have so far been solved.
And of course, you just saw a video there of the protests last year where 2 of our LMPD officers were shot.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Natalia.
How are those masks protecting our children?
Is this an actual logical question you're asking?
Up next, the discussions, debates of masking school children in Floyd County heating up during a protest outside the Floyd County Health Department. While Governor Beshear warns that new data in Kentucky shows that thousands of kids are getting sick from COVID.
Get ready for a heat wave. A stretch of 90s fills the 10-day earliest alert forecast. What about rain chances? We've got a couple of those. And a look to the radar, where we're tracking at least a couple of sprinkles tonight. And we'll have that for you when we come back on Wave 3 News.